The New Friend is the 7th episode of the 8th season of Frasier. This is directed by Scott Ellis, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts along the way. And it's a solid episode. There are some really great moments. I don't love what they're doing with Daphne as a character. I understand why, and I will try and talk a little bit around that without going into too much detail, but that aside, it is a solid episode. It starts off with Frasier in a restaurant. He gets a call from Niles. Niles is running late, but then Roz comes in with a date. She's on a date with somebody called Luke, played by Gary Cole, and Frasier basically begs Roz to let him join them while he's waiting for Niles. And Luke and Frasier have a nice time. They bond over boats and Harvard. But then Roz takes a phone call and she has to go home because Alice got a bead stuck up her nose. And that means that Luke and Frasier can continue to bond. We then cut to Frasier back at his apartment with Martin and Daphne. And Luke had called while Frasier was out. And it's very clear that Frasier really likes Luke. And Frasier said what I was thinking. Because up until this point, it seems like Frasier's really impressed by Luke and he really admires him and Luke has really interesting stories. But Frasier likes to be that person. In a friendship, in a relationship, he likes to be the one who is fascinating. And he then kind of confirms what I was thinking when Frasier says, usually I'm the cool friend. I'm not sure if cool is the right word. I would think it's cool, but in terms of society's use of the word cool, I don't know if Frasier would be considered cool, but it's nice that he confirmed that the obvious is there, that usually he's the friend in that friendship who has these interesting stories, and it's nice to have Frasier on the receiving end of that for a change. Niles then comes in with Eddie, and we get a decent amount of Eddie in this, which I really like, and Frasier he refers to him as it's funny, I promise. He refers to him as Edward Scissorpaws. Which is absolutely fantastic. A brilliant film, and yeah, that amused me quite a lot. And it turns out that Niles had been looking after Eddie, and this bit really annoyed me. It's unusual for me to be annoyed at anything Niles does. I don't always agree with everything he does, but it's unusual that I'll get really annoyed. And Martin was annoyed as well. Niles was meant to be looking after Eddie, and we find out that Niles put Eddie into a kennel. He tries to say it was a dog spa. No, it's a kennel. I'm disgusted by that. If you need to put your animal into a kennel, fine. They serve a good purpose. Many of them are really caring. A lot of them have like webcams and things so you can watch your animal, which I think is absolutely brilliant. I'm not against kennels as a concept because sometimes needs must. But if you have the option of keeping a pet with a familiar person in a home environment where they have the opportunity to run around and cozy up on things, and granted, Niles probably wouldn't let Eddie on his bed. Either way, I won't go on about it, but I was really disgusted by that, and it really, really annoyed me, and it was so easy to feel how angered Martin was, and I'm on his side 100%. If somebody was looking after my cat, and I found out that they put her in a cattery, I would be furious. So completely on Martin's side here. To be fair, Eddie seems fine. He seems okay. And Roz then comes in and declares Luke's a slime bag. Apparently she caught him with another woman, which is a little bit awkward for Frasier because, of course, Frasier's just made a new friend. And he actually goes to visit Luke to kind of say goodbye, which, on the one hand, is a sweet thing to do rather than just cutting off the friendship, not communicating with him, to at least give him, I guess, the closure of ending the friendship. But at the same time, they've only known each other very, very briefly, so it seems like quite a lot to do, and I feel like a phone call would have sufficed. So I don't think he made the wrong decision, but it seems like a bold move. However, while he's there, he happens to give Luke some writing tips as he encourages Luke to write down his stories, and then they ultimately realise that they can carry on being friends, they just can't tell Roz. And that's obviously not a great decision. Frasier and Roz are then at Frasier's apartment, and then Frasier goes back to see Luke, and neither Daphne nor Martin are happy with this. And as Daphne points out, if he doesn't think it's a problem that he's seeing Luke behind Roz's back, why is he hiding it from Roz? And I think there's some really great food for thought there for anybody doing anything that they're perhaps hiding from somebody, but they think it's fine. Do you really think it's fine if you're hiding it from somebody? I thought that was a pretty decent takeaway and something that's very, very valid. We then have the most amazing scene. I won't say it's the best scene ever in Frasier, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. We're in Cafe Nervosa, initially with Frasier and Niles, but then Roz comes in and Niles goes to sit separately. Just before Roz comes in, we see her outside with Luke. They're back together again, but they don't want to tell Frasier. Now we're in Cafe Nervosa with Frasier and Roz. Niles is off to the side, but we cut to Niles as this progresses, and his facial expressions are just absolutely wonderful. I loved how he responded to this. Roz says that she's going to take Frasier out to dinner, and Frasier phones Luke to cancel. Of course, he doesn't say to Roz that he's phoning Luke, he's just phoning to cancel with somebody. And of course, because Luke is now free, Luke phones Roz and says that he's free, so Roz then has to cancel her dinner with Frasier. So then Frasier, now free, phones Luke back to say he's free again, but of course, he's now got a date with Roz. And then Roz realizes that Frasier was being a good friend. She can't cancel the dinner. So she phones Luke back to cancel with him again. And it's just utter chaos. And it was just fabulous. And it played out beautifully. It was chaotic, but easy enough to follow. And Niles in the corner, trying to mind his own business while also being very fully aware of what was happening. I loved it a lot. Niles didn't have to be there. It would have worked without him. But just that addition of his response to it, I really, really thoroughly enjoyed. And then sometime later, Niles comes into the apartment with a peace offering, and Martin is very happy. He does seem genuinely apologetic. I do believe that Niles regrets what he did. I feel like he would do it again and learn to get away with it. Martin only found out because Eddie had a tag on him with the Kennels details. I feel like Niles would do it again, but I do think in the moment he was apologetic, genuinely, sincerely, and he he and Martin are going to go out for a walk. Eddie escapes into the elevator, and Niles manages to get him back just before Martin sees, and we just get a really nice amount of Eddie in this. I love him so much, and that was a lot of fun. And we then cut to Roz going down to Luke's boat, and I do have a question. And this is something that I see quite a lot in films and TV shows. Can you just walk onto boats? Do they not have doors that you can lock? There are so many times in films and TV episodes where somebody will just walk onto somebody else's boat. And I don't just mean the top, I mean they'll go down the stairs and into the living quarters. I don't know if that's the right terminology. And of course, this is what happens here as well. And Roz goes down there. She hears that there's clearly another woman there with Luke. So she tries to hide and finds Frasier is also hiding in a closet. So they both hide together. Frasier came down to see Luke, heard somebody, decided to hide as well. And Frasier says something that I think is really moving. And he says to Roz, "The last true friend I made was you." And it's pretty true. Ever since he left Boston, Frasier hasn't really had a good friend. And in a way, I feel like Martin and Niles have filled that void for him. In fact, maybe that void never really had time to develop because he went from having a group of friends with the gang at Cheers to then living in Seattle, Martin moving in with him, and then obviously reconnecting with Niles. There was never really that chance for him to feel lonely because there were always people around him. Had that not been the case, maybe he would have made friends sooner. Maybe he would have been out and about more and met people. So I don't necessarily think he couldn't make friends, bearing in mind he works with Roz, that's how he became friends with her. But I feel like there's not this need. I don't think he feels lonely enough to push himself to meet other people. And I feel like this is quite common. If you're surrounded by people, family, friends, a partner, whatever, you don't have that void in your life. You have people to communicate with regularly. So I feel like Frasier could find friends if he wanted to. I don't think he couldn't. Clearly, he can with the gang at Cheers. But because he has Martin and Niles, and then Roz, of course, and Daphne, he just maybe hasn't felt that desperate need to. And I think that that's important to point out. That's my reading of the character anyway. Maybe one would argue that actually he's not very friendly, he's quite pompous, not many people would want to spend a lot of time with him. I could definitely agree with that to an extent, particularly after he started working at KACL. I feel like had he been at KACL before Cheers, I feel like he might have been a bit more difficult to get on with. But certainly there are parts of him that are friendly, and there are times when he did try a little too hard to be part of the gang at Cheers. He wasn't always warmly welcomed. There are certainly episodes where they kind of take advantage of this. So it's an interesting one. I'd love to know if anybody has any strong thoughts on that. Do you think Frasier Crane can make friends easily if he makes the effort? I'm kind of on the fence, but I feel like he definitely has the ability. And certainly weighing that up with Cheers as well just makes it a fascinating discussion. And then the scene ends with Frasier and Roz tumbling out of the cupboard because they accidentally inflate an inflatable, which I thought a brilliant way to end the scene, an absolutely perfect way for things to unfold. And then we have the final scene, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it, or I hate what it's going to lead to. Because in the final scene, the closing, Daphne and Eddie are both eating from Niles' peace offering, the peace offering he gave to Martin, which in itself is fine, but they are very clearly showing Daphne stuffing her face. And they showed that earlier on when Niles came over and brought her some truffles. And she started ripping into the box as well. And I don't want to say too much. They are setting something up. It does serve a purpose. It does seem a little out of place here, but it does serve a purpose. But I will say I hate it. They didn't have to do this. They could have done something completely different. I will talk more about that when it becomes more relevant in the episodes down the line, but I will just say I really, really don't like it. I don't like it at all, so it's not a great ending, but more Eddie, so can't really complain there. Ultimately, there are a lot of great aspects, and The New Friend is a really interesting, definitely very thought-provoking episode of Frasier.